Hi everybody out in the world of YouTube, Andrew Cuneo here, and it's time again to revisit Tainted Pact to see how we can update the deck with the additions from Streets of New Capenna. And the way I've chosen to update it is actually I've decided that I think the mana might be good enough now to add an additional color. In the past I've always played Tainted Pact as just straight blue-black because I felt like the deck just really, like, you just didn't get enough good dual lands to push out beyond blue-black. But we've got this one new land here, Rafine's Tower. So we've got an Esper tri-land now. And that was enough to get me to put a bunch of the other blue-white and black-white duals into the deck and try to stretch the mana base to fit a little bit of white. So I think that the card that is most appealing in white for this deck is just Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. It gives you, it's a very strong control card. It's played in, blue-white control decks all the time in Historic. And it does give you another way to win the game, which is nice. If somehow you're cut off from being able to use your Jace Wielder of Mysteries combo to win, you can win a game with nothing but this Teferi. It involves, you need to get the emblem, and you actually need to, get the emblem but keep the Teferi in place. So you need to get up to 9 loyalty. Then you get the emblem, and then over the course of, the next few turns, you get this Teferi up to the point where it can minus on itself. So it keeps shuffling itself back into your deck. So that way you can't get decked, and you just exile all of your opponent's permanents that do anything. Super duper late game, you need complete control of the game to win that way, but it is a way to win a game. So that's nice. The other card that I've added for white is the Alchemy, a rebalanced version of Teferi Time Raveler. So weaker card than the version of Teferi that was originally printed that wound up getting banned in Historic, and then it came back with this weaker version. I wanted to try this out just to see, if it felt like it was strong enough. There's a couple of cool combos with this Teferi in this deck. If you weren't playing when I came up with the Doom Foretold deck, right when Eldraine came out, one of the cool things you can do with this Teferi is you tutor with Wishclaw Talisman, and then you use the minus ability to bounce the talisman back to your hand so your opponent doesn't get the tutor off of it. That's a pretty nice interaction. You could also use it to bounce Omen of the Sea. You could use it to, reset the counters on a Mazemind Tome. Also in the sideboard, I have a Meathook Massacre that you could bounce Meathook Massacre to get a second shot at the sweeper. So there's a bunch of little things this card does. Also, it provides you with some shields that make it so your opponent can't kill your Jace if you're using it to kill them, if you have Teferi sitting in play. So I think this card might do enough to be good. It's going to need some more playtesting to prove itself. The one new spell that I've added from Streets of New Capenna is Tainted Indulgence. So this is, 2 mana card drawing kind of spell. This deck is not particularly great at getting the 5 of 5 on the mana costs in the yard, but it is possible. So the reason I say it's not that great is if you look, there's a ton of 1 and 2 mana cards, little bit at 3, little bit at 4, 1, 5, and 1, 6. And then you are going to wind up with lands in your graveyard some of the time. Some of the lands go to the graveyard when you use them. There's some cycling lands. There's Field of Ruin, Fabled Passage. There's also cards like Consider, Search for Azcanta that are going to fill up the yard. So it is possible to get this to the point where it's just straight up draw 2, but I think just as a draw 2, discard 1 for 2 mana, that's actually the kind of card that this deck would like. So that's another card I've included. The cards I cut from the deck, I cut the Commit to Memory. It was kind of expensive and clunky. I am a really big fan of playing Commit with Narset, but when you only have 1 Narset and 1 Commit, it really didn't come up that much. I cut the Thought Erasure, and I cut Otherworldly Gaze, I think, to make room for these cards. And the Thought Erasure and the Otherworldly Gaze were just, I thought they were 2 of the weaker cards in the deck. Looking at the lands, how I changed the lands, one thing I did have to do is I had to cut a basic swamp for basic plains so that I can use Fabled Passage and Field of Ruin to go and get the white mana to cast these 2 white cards. That was a pretty big cost because you do really want access to early black mana as well, but I just thought you couldn't get enough sources if you didn't have a basic plains in your deck, unfortunately. And then I've replaced all of the pathways that were like blue-red or blue-green or red-black. Those are all gone now in place of lands like Deserted Beach, Glacial Fortress. There's a Godless Shrine in the deck now, which wasn't there before. Irrigated Farmland. Like I replaced the Lonely Sandbar with an Irrigated Farmland. We've got the Rafine's Tower, like I said. That kind of came in place of an Ice Tunnel, which that was just a straight-up upgrade. I switched. This used to be a blue-black-green Triome, and I switched it to a blue-white Triome. So I did cut... I am 2 black sources down to get these white cards into the deck, which maybe I went a little bit too far. Maybe this should be a black-white whatever Triome. Like you could play the Mardu Triome if you wanted to. But anyway, this is the mana base I'm gonna play with for the time being. I don't think that there's really... I haven't identified any other white cards I really want, but maybe there's some that people could suggest. But if you think about it, like it's got to be a single white card. I'm not going to put double white cards in my deck. The mana's not good enough to support that. So it's got to be a single white card. And if you look at the kind of single white cards that are being played in, blue-white control decks, there's not any that really stand out to me as something I really want to have. Like, I thought a little bit about the White March, but while it hits some targets that you can't hit with the black removal spells, I do think that, for killing cheap creatures, which is really what you want the removal to do in this deck, the black cards are better. So I haven't added any other white cards. Another card you could consider is Rest in Peace in the sideboard. I don't have that, though. Looking at the sideboard, nothing much has really changed. The one thing I did is, for a long time I was playing God Eternal Kefnet, and it just... I really like God Eternal Kefnet, but it just wasn't good enough. I kept having disappointing experiences with it, where I would lose from situations I thought that it was going to be good enough to carry the game, and it still just wasn't. So then for a while I was playing a Torrential Gearhulk, which kind of has the same problems that God Eternal Kefnet had. Namely, they both get hit by kicked Unholy Heat, which is a pretty unfortunate exchange. So I just cut the Torrential Gearhulk, and I'm just playing Ray of Enfeeblement now to be a little bit better against like blue-white auras type decks, or white weenie decks like that mono-white deck that was my last historic video. If someone is playing something like that, obviously Ray of Enfeeblement would be great. And the reason I felt like it was fine to make that switch, where I was switching a card that was like, for other blue decks, but now I've got a card that's to play against white weenie style decks, is because I've got these Teferis in my deck that I'm not going to want to board out against blue decks, where in the past there were cards in my main deck that I was going to be boarding out against blue decks. So that's why I felt comfortable making that change. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hop into some historic ladder games. Up against David with an O. This is good enough, I think. I'm up against a Phoenix deck, presumably. Ooh, it's a Demi-Lich Phoenix deck. Cool. Do I want to scry this turn? I have so many lands, I might actually wind up cycling that. Although I also have this land to cycle. I think I will scry. Stern, alright, Duress. I'm happy to find that one. Oh, it's not. Well, I guess maybe Phoenix decks are playing this card now. This is more like a burn deck. Interesting. What I'm hoping to do, I'm hoping they can't get the Demi-Lich into play on their turn, which probably they can't. I guess if they have a... I guess they just really just need a land, and they can, actually. It's a little bit unfortunate. Because what I actually just want to do is I just want to Talisman for a Soul Guide Lantern. But they're going to get the Demi-Lich out this turn. It's unfortunate. What I can do is I can Field of Ruin them, which I think I want to do regardless. It's possible they don't have a basic land in their deck. Let's see. They don't. I think I'm just gonna spin this to get a Fatal Push. Just slow them down. Keep my life total high. This seems like a really burn heavy deck, so I definitely want to keep my life total high if possible. Okay. Davriel's Withering is actually a pretty good card against Dreadhorde Arcanist. Do I need to exile the Demi-Lich? I don't think so, but I'm definitely going to want to cycle this. So let's start with that. And yeah, I don't think I can afford to just Memory Leak a Demi-Lich out of their yard. I think they did that because they were planning to recast something with the Dreadhorde Arcanist, maybe? I can replay the Demi-Lich now, I believe. That's unfortunate for me. Come on, spell. The plan to draw a spell has not worked. Uh-oh, the scry to the top. You know what? Oh, I should have Otawara. I could have Otawara the Wishclaw Talisman. That would have maybe been better.
We can figure a way out of this. Let's think this
I milled myself there, both because I don't want to fuel the Demi-Lich. Well, that's why I did it, but there is the risk that I mill all my Tainted Pacts, and then I can't really win the game. But I think it'd be kind of suicidal to start milling them when they have a Demi-Lich in play. Okay, I like that they didn't cast anything pre-combat to flash back with this thing. They're just all Demi-Liches all day. I could go for a Tainted Pact. I could go for a Languish. I could go for a Path of Peril. Cling to Dust. I guess that's... I can always just cycle that. If need be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I draw Path of Peril here, I'll still be able to cast it.
always an
I should have milled them. I'll probably be able to live through this turn. I'm gonna let them cast the Faithless Looting. I didn't even want to. I'm doing this to gain life, not because I'm actually that afraid that they're going to get it back. I can't really afford to let them put me down to 3 because they'll just use the Wishclaw Talisman to get a Wizard's Lightning, I'd assume. Make a 4/4 here. I want to see if I can just draw the Tainted Pact off the top of my deck so I can win. I did not. This is annoying with Tainted Indulgence in my deck now. When I'm escaping, I'm going to have to start thinking about that too. It's not going to be fun. Or maybe it will be. Well, I think I just killed myself. I needed to leave the Cling to Dust up. So I can just use the Wishclaw Talisman now. Maybe they don't have any more Wizard's Lightnings in their deck. Or Static Discharges. That doesn't seem right. That seems like they could just tutor for Static Discharge and I would die. Maybe they're not going to see it. I certainly didn't. Okay. We can work with this.
How you play the hand of death.
Not to the point where this, using this ability wins for me. Oh, it died. That was too greedy, that game. Alright, I think Miscast is good. Ether Gust's okay. I think I definitely want Infernal Grasp. Maybe I just want all that stuff. What don't I want, though, is the question. I probably don't want this. There's too many cards. I don't want that. Don't need that. Maybe don't need that one. Take out that. Do I want Dabriel's Withering? It seemed like it was really only going to be good against the Dreadhorde Arcanists from what I saw of their deck. Maybe they just had Phoenixes and didn't draw any of them. That'd be a little bit surprising, though. I think I was supposed to value my life total pretty highly in this matchup. They're a Delver deck. That makes sense. Alright, I'm going to get to use this Teferi to probably bounce the Delver, unless they could have cards like Spell Pierce in their deck. But let's hope they don't. The new and not improved Teferi does have higher starting loyalty, so now it doesn't go to 1 when you activate it right away, so that it's not going to die to this Arcanist this turn unless they have... I guess they could have a spell to trigger the Arcanist. I'm gonna let them shoot me with this Wizard's Lightning rather than blowing my Soul Guide Lantern. Do you think I'm going to be the first person to ever grow my Symmetry Sage with Tainted Pact? Because I will do that. I'll do it and I'll like it. Not really sure what I'm looking for here. I think I'd be happy with a Cling to Dust. Mostly just worried about getting burnt out. And I'll take that one. Sure. Sure. Pretty good against my Leer, huh?
There are so many mysteries to uncover. Keep an open mind. Meditate and prepare.
It's the Inquisition. They have a Demi-Lich in their hand. Die to an untapped land. Play the Leer. Or if I don't play the Leer, rather. They did that in response to the Leer. I don't think that's what they wanted to do. Lame. A breeding pool to start. Is this a merfolk deck? That's, I have a snowland now. I bet this is some sort of like Night Pack Ambusher blue-green flash deck. I played the wrong land. I'll be punished by having to put my Hall of Storm Giants into play tapped at some point. Might wind up being really punished because now I'm not going to be able to play the Irrigated Farmland untapped. So I can't play the Jace this turn necessarily. That is some real punishment. Playing a Golos deck. Alright. See if they have anything in their deck that can interact with this. Probably they don't. Probably they're just going to spend Golos. Hopefully they don't hit anything too annoying. Hit a bunch of ramp cards that don't do anything. So I certainly don't want to cast this Tainted Pact when they can play an Archmage's Charm for free. I can either wait to cast it on my turn, or I could cast it at the end of their turn. Have access to 2 blue. They probably don't have a card like Spell Pierce in their deck. That'd be pretty weird. you think they have something and I'm going to lose? I hope not. But they haven't given up, so it's possible.
Let's try this.
Simic Ramp. I don't know what's going to be in that deck. So, do I want Thought Distortion? I mean, they had Archmage's Charm. They probably really don't have that much stuff. Probably Ether Gust is okay. I don't even know that I want Brazen Borrower. Maybe I'll just board in Reckoner Bankbuster. I don't think I want Languish. I don't think I want Path of Peril. Probably don't want Soul Guide Lantern. I could just have Infernal Grasp in my deck. It can kill the Golos if I want to play a slower game. Fatal Push could kill their Llanowar Elves, but not really all that much else. What else would I have? Miscast or Negate? Maybe I should have Miscast in my deck. I don't really understand what their deck is trying to do exactly, so maybe we'll learn in this game. When I said I don't really understand what their deck is trying to do, what I really mean is I don't really understand why they've included blue in their green ramp deck. I mean, there's probably a reason. And I don't think that just because they have access to Archmage's Charm, like that doesn't sound like that great of a reason, but maybe it is their reason. I guess their thought process is that they can cast their Archmage's Charm off of World Tree. This is kind of a weird hand where I'm gonna pact for a Jace right now to set myself up to potentially win on turn 4. Need to not go past a Jace though. Sure. So here I need to pack down to having either 3, 2, or 1 cards left in my deck. Just remember, I'm going to have a draw step that I need to have a card left in my library for. But I don't need to find anything specific because I'm just going to play my land, play my Jace and plus it, and as long as they don't have Pact of Negation in their hand, I'll win. Which I don't think they got to stop when I cast the Tainted Pact, so they don't have Pact of Negation. So here, there's 3 left. Could have taken that. I'll take this one. Look, I'm an Esper deck. I have a white pathway.
Let's think this.
Okay, seems like a reasonable hand. Let's see what I'm playing against. A Life Gain Angels deck. Guess I'll take the Angel of Unity. Casting that more just for curve purposes than because I actually feared the Soul Warden. Same thing here. I just want to buy time while I get my mana base established.
My responsibility. I'll protect you.
We'll get to the point where you know, their cards are not going to be as powerful as my cards, assuming they're not playing from ahead. I wasn't originally planning to do this, but it's going to allow me to counter this Inquisitor Captain. Which maybe that should have been the plan all along. See if we can find a land. I don't really want a land so badly I'm going to keep one, but if I can make an untapped land drop this turn, I will.
Here goes nothing. Want me to phase you out of time? This might be a bad idea.
Please play something. Please play this before combat. Pump up that Righteous Valkyrie. It needs to be righteous.
I've done the hero thing before.
I'm gonna play Path of Peril to get rid of these tokens. So that Teferi doesn't take any damage and I can get another minus. Alright, so they didn't even really play long enough to get to see what my deck does. But I think they got the gist that I was going to kill other creatures. I think those are the kill spells that I like. I don't mind having Leer in my deck for this. I don't want Mystical Dispute. I don't want Spell Pierce. I don't want Duress. Don't want the Soul Guide Lantern. Kind of like all those. Guess I don't need the Wishclaw Talisman. It would be fine in this matchup, though. Maybe I should take out Baleful Mastery. It's pretty expensive. It's certainly not a bad card, but it is just 4 mana kill a creature. Which I think I'm doing better than that out of my sideboard. So this does not provide black. Still a little bit scary. They could wind up with a really big board. And one of my sweepers is Languish, which stops working against the Righteous Valkyrie fairly quickly. What you got for me, deck? Languish. Not bad. So this can go and get a swamp, so I think I'm going to need to shock myself this game. I played this deck for so long with a swamp and a snow-covered swamp, and I'm sure at some point I'm going to make a mistake and not realize that I've already seen my snow-covered swamp and my Fabled Passage will no longer get black. Guess they could have Collected Company. That was pretty greedy on my part. I was really greedy. Now I could lose.
All just an illusion. Time is much more malleable than people think.
This requires 6 mana to do the buff play. They fear the Teferi. It's understandable. Alright, I'm not going to be greedy and play Opt if they leave their mana untapped. I learned my lesson. I learned it the hard way, but I learned it. I'm going to leave up access to Archmage's Charm or Censor plus Omen of the Sea. I can't afford to leave up access to Censor and Archmage's Charm there. How big is the angel this thing makes? It makes a 4/4. We'll have the option of stealing that angel with Archmage's Charm, if that's something I decided I'm interested in. This Lear isn't actually that juicy yet. It might wind up just being a 9-mana Languish. Let's do something that stops me from winning. Hexproof or indestructible? No. What do you think they're hoping is going to happen? Alright, well that's going to do it for this iteration of my ongoing attempt to perfect the Tainted Pact deck in Historic. I know there's at least a small number of people that are big fans of it, and I continue to think that's just a great deck. Just super fun to play, lots and lots of interesting games. I mean, we got to see it beat up pretty badly on some, you know, not super interactive mid-range decks. The Angels deck and the blue-green ramp deck are, I think those are, you know, very easy matchups to win when you have the, just, you know, the control deck that has the combo kill, which is what Tainted Pact is. The blue-red Wizards deck, that's the style of deck that's kind of harder to beat, where you're playing against somebody who's playing, you know, an aggressive strategy, and they can potentially have some number of, you know, cheap counters to interact with you, even though the opponent didn't play any of those. They probably did have them in their deck for game 2. I think had I played a little bit better in that match, certainly in the first game, I might have actually been able to win that game. Played a little bit sloppy and had a couple of judgment calls not go my way as well. So the Teferis were actually pretty good. I mean, I drew the 4-mana, well, Teferi 3, which now costs 4. I drew that a bunch, and it actually was, you know, pretty nice at doing what the Tainted Pact deck wanted, which was just slow your opponent down while you dig through your deck to, you know, assemble your combo. So that was pretty cool. That felt good, and the mana worked out. That's always the issue with the Tainted Pact deck is the mana good enough, and it's still going to continue to be the issue with it, I think, but it functioned at least for today. So that's it for now. Thanks everybody who made it this far, and I'll catch you next time.